Today I'm going to be talking about 3 articles: Colored Property and White Backlash by David Freund, White Shame, Responsibility and Moral Emotions by Daniel Haggerty, and Justice Work in the Ghetto Poor by Tommy Shelby. In David Freund's Colored Property and White Backlash, he talks about the difficulties faced by African Americans when it comes to home ownership. Freund mentions the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which would outlaw housing discrimination, and that it received an incredible amount of white backlash. Many citizens even went as far as to take the initiative to write to their mayor to vote against the bill. And the struggle for integrated housing continued. In comparison to many of the articles we've read over the course of the semester, this article was definitely more readable, which would make it more appropriate for younger audiences to be able to comprehend in comparison to some of the more difficult readings we've had. In Haggerty's White Shame, Responsibility and Moral Emotions, he makes a clear distinction between guilt and shame from the start. He claims when a person feels guilty, it is their action that is the focus, and that they fear punishment from some other power. Whereas with shame, the person themselves is the focus, and the person fears abandonment from those close to them. Haggerty talks about 2 forms of white guilt, institutional and liberal. Institutional white guilt takes the form of institutional feelings and behaviors instead of personal feelings, behaviors, and responsibilities of individual white people, which is more the focus of liberal white guilt. America contains both types of white guilt, but not equally. American society overemphasizes guilt and underemphasizes shame, which makes it difficult for Americans to take responsibility for and attempt to change race-related issues in America. Haggerty argues that there needs to be more of a balance in order to have a society in which we are all united by friendship. Haggerty definitely clearly defines guilt and shame thoroughly, but I didn't think he truly needed to be quite as detailed as he was. However, he does take the definitions and applies them to concepts, and he applies the concepts of guilt and shame to American politics. The reading itself could potentially be more difficult for readers than like Shelby's article and Freund's. And that brings us to Shelby's article, Justice Work and the Ghetto Poor. He talks largely about potential reasons in which members of the ghetto poor may have to justify refusing work. Some of the reasons he gives for them to refuse work include the jobs paying too little, the jobs requiring too much physical exertion or too much time that the worker wouldn't be able to engage in any non-work related activities outside of work, and the job requires too much physical endurance, or they're very dirty or dangerous and the pay doesn't compensate adequately. The job interferes with the workers' care of their children, which is their main purpose. Shelby does a good job of defining the words he uses frequently, such as ghetto and joblessness. Shelby's articles seem fairly redundant when he talks about the reasons people have for refusing work, such as jobs not paying enough. He mentions it several times. His article, like Freund's, was definitely more readable and would be applicable to younger audiences as well. Overall, all of the authors gave adequate background in the focus of providing historical context and definitions for the words that they frequently use, as well as distinctions between similar words. Shelby's and Freund's articles were definitely more readable than Haggerty's, which would make them applicable for younger audiences, and Haggerty's was more difficult to comprehend. All articles here touched on racism and continued racial issues in America, whether it be owning a home, finding a job, or white people not taking the initiative to attempt to fix these issues. So racism was definitely a strong theme in all 3. Okay, bye.